semi-comfortable apartment. You get a semi-permanent bed like the one you see here. Even as a petty officer, though, you don't get this bed privately. You have to share this bed on shifts. And if you think that's gross, we still do that today in the U.S. Navy and most others. We call it hot racking, which means you sleep for 6 hours, roll out of bed to go work, and then Hans or Fritz goes into the same pre-warm and sweaty bunk. And I do mean sweaty. What do you think the average temperature is inside this old pig's boat? 75 is room temperature, maybe 80 degrees, 85. Closer to 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit for 90 days straight, which I believe is like 30 to 40 degrees centigrade if I'm not mistaken. And in between the diesel engines, that could get up to a balmy 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll just say, very uncomfortable to be in. This is a war boat, it's not a pleasure cruise, and this is one of the nicer sleeping arrangements. If you look through that hatchway, you're gonna see more beds in what's definitely not a bedroom. That is the main weapon station of our German submarine, the forward torpedo tube room. And that big tube we've left on the floor there for you is one of the original of what was 22 3,000-pound or 1,500 kilo explosives that would sink Allied merchant ships. This German submarine had one job in the Second World War. Find merchant ships, sink those merchant ships, preferably before they made their way to England. That was the big target for these U-boats, but we're inside of a Type 9C. And this is a little bit bigger than your average German submarine of World War II because this U-boat was supposed to get to the Americas. On one tank of gas, 200 tons of diesel, U-505 could make its way from France to Florida, see an alligator, make it back to France again in 90 days' time. Luckily for us, U-505 was very unlucky for the Germans in the Second World War, only sinking 8 Allied merchant ships during the 3 years back in the She did sink some though, so I'm going to take us to a simulated torpedo attack. Eyes front, it's going to get just a tad explosive and a little bit dim, as the generations sound like the Germans to sink American merchant ship. Main lights off to save on battery power. Red lights on for battle stations, and the dive alarm sounds signaling men throughout the U-boat to open up valves like this one, letting water begin to flow into the ballast tanks. That whoosh noise is the air leaving the ballast, water flows in, and now all 1,200 tons of the submarine becomes heavy enough to get to 30 feet below attack periscope depth. Now for a lot of math. In German, serious type of math. You're listening to the captain of U-505 relay a firing solution, a mathematical equation that's going to allow these boys to launch that warhead at speed and make contact with the American ship. Angle for the torpedoes being set to 20 degrees. Is it all complete? Yes, it is. Los is like the English term fire, literally loose or away in German. That ticking noise you hear afterwards is actually a stopwatch, which we still use today, because if you do your math correctly, you know exactly how much time it'll take before contact. That's contact. Now, luckily for history, like I mentioned, this German submarine, very unlucky for the Germans in the Second World War. This boat was actually sabotaged, messed with by French spies, not once, not twice, but on 6 separate occasions, cutting your wartime history in half and saving quite a lot of Allied boats. So I always like to say, gave enough fluids. Any questions before we hit the next leg of our journey? 59. 59. Just shy of 60. When she was captured, originally the complement was supposed to be 48 guys inside the boat, but they had to add 11 whole men when they added the winter guard, the anti-aircraft machines on the back of the boat. Good question. That was all for maintenance. It's also a hybrid vehicle, so under my feet you're going to see the batteries on board, what powers U-505 while he's under the waves. These batteries, not too dissimilar from our car batteries. What I like to think is the more important power plant is the only cook on board the submarine. His name was Tony, that's a true fact, and he was cooking 3 square meals a day to all 59 sweaty guys in a very small kitchenette. So y'all can follow me this way. This is all we get for the kitchen. So you got your range, your hot plates, you got the sink behind you, and this, got a double stack refrigerator, so that's the height of luxury. And this is the first of 3 ways originally out of or into the submarine. as a chief officer, these 4 beds are private, which means you don't have to hot bunk. What'd you say? Awesome. These 4 beds are private, and that really just means your own private lice. Still private is private. Chief Officer's locker would have a special blend of coffee and a small Christmas tree for that holiday as well. And you have some original glassware and ceramics from the 40s too. And one thing we haven't recreated for you all, you're welcome, is the salted meat that was hanging from the ceiling of this and every other compartment. There's no place to store food otherwise, so sometimes you even had to sleep with bags of potatoes or canned bread in the hot bunked rack. Let's follow this way. Looking off to your left is the hydrophone, the hunting station inside U-505. You can think of that as a big telephone. Across you got the radio room with the record player in it. And the height of luxury inside the boat doesn't get any better than this. The captain's area right behind you. Take a look at how big that bed is for the captain. Last captain, Harold Longa, was 6'2", so it was an issue for them as well. Weapons locker for small arms, and we've cut this hatchway 2 times bigger than it used to be, just a circular hatch back in the day. Anywhere on the green floors of that
It's like a Doctor Who engineer or something.
Yeah, it's like a reverse TARDIS. It's very large on the outside, itty bitty living space on the inside. It's very true. Now we're inside. Yes, so that's basically your speed dial, what we call a telegraph, and the way that works is that you as an officer would set the speed. So you can see now it's set on Stopp, which means stop in German.
Stopp.
And if you wanted to go full speed, you'd set it all the way to the top black, which is Auskraft, that's full power for all intents and purposes. And if you want to go in reverse, the red bit of that dial is Zurück, or back power, and Tauchen in green, that's dive. So you have to set your engines to a very specific wavelength if you want to dive under the waves.
Why are they there too? Is it for multiple engines?
Yes, so there's a port, which is always red, which means left or starboard in green or right, and that's the same reason why airplane wingtips have those same colors. So you know if the airplane's going away from you or coming at you. Good question. And we're in the control room, so all major movement of the boat's maintained from this very small compartment. That small machine right behind you, miss, with the 2 brass buttons, that is your steering wheel, what you call a helmsman's station. Those 2 buttons, when depressed, move the rudders left and right. And we can all fit inside, I promise you.
Yeah.
Somebody can stand next to R2-D2 over there if you're so inclined. And then over here we got the planesman station. These control the wings or fins of U-505. So this is up and down movement of the forward and back planes in the water. And we have our depth gauges here. Allows you to know how deep you're going in the waves. And directly above our heads, conning tower. That big structure you saw on top of U-505. And it's up this one skinny hatchway that all 59 German sailors escaped out of their submarine, and down the same hatchway that 9 American sailors came to capture the sub for generations to come. Questions before we tackle how this... Oh yes, there didn't used to be this gray thing, so we've added that.
I'm like, wait, I kind of didn't
Yes. You're exactly. We've made some changes. This is more of a liability change over the years. And you can look through it and move all the way up to the top of our museum space. We've updated all the look. On June 4th, 1944, this German submarine was returning back home 200 miles off the coast of West Africa when Chicago native
This is my wife. This is my wife, Elena.
As you can guess, a bunch of very angry American ships ran into this German side. Now, from the German point of view, your best way of escaping a large group of angry ships trying to sink you is to do what modern submarines do best. Get under the waves as quickly and as quietly as possible. So Captain Lana, in this very compartment,
Oh, this is awesome. Something's going on. We're under attack. We're under attack. We are under attack. We're going down. This captain's got it under control, though. You don't gotta worry. MGMA. Let's do this. Shit. No. Let me sneak off this tour here and go do some my shit, you know, my business, my bidding. Chicago, you're not supposed to be here without a tour. I'm continuing on. So we go through the engine room. This is a place I'm sure I'm not supposed to be. You hear them cracks on the floor? I'm all here all alone. Here, Captain. Select. Peter. My name is Peter, and I have the hat. Now let's continue on way far without the crew, doing things we're really not supposed to do and be filming. Oh yeah, this is my U-boat. I remember it. Just like General Patton, I was there. Boom, boom, boom. Now how are we gonna get this thing into the ocean and start running? I need like at least my wife and 2 other people, and then we need to get this thing into the lake. Then we'll start cruising. Yeah. Alright. This is pretty fancy smancy. I don't know how much farther I want to go before I get reprimanded. But here we have controls. We have lights. That's lit. We have machinery. Looks like we have a little control hatch here. Another door to go out. I don't know if that's where we're going to be leaving. Things overhead. I want to get back to the tour so we can hear all the rest of the sound effects and dials. Yeah, here Leon. Here's some intricate machinery. Yeah, this U-boat. Does anybody dare me to touch a dial and spin something? You know, like how about this one, guys? I'm touching it. How about that? Can I tap the glass? I tapped it. What are you gonna do now? Ooh, how about if I put one of these boys up? No, I'm not gonna do that. All right, let's get back to the tour because it's really popping off. We're under attack. U-505 under attack. U-505 under attack. That's bad. That's bad.
Compressed air stream out of ballast like the ones under my feet and into the ballast tanks in between the submarine, making all 1,200 tons of U-505 light enough to surface in just seconds. And once at the surface, the Germans escape and are very kindly picked up by the Americans as prisoners of war. And then 9 Americans come down and eventually capture the boat for generations to come. That's going to be the next leg of our story. Y'all can follow yourselves past the speaking tubes. Take a look to your bottom left as you're around the corner. There's a hole in the floor. One that
Give me the
just
hat.
Can I go for the hole in the floor?
and real quick, I'm just going to whiz them around there. And if you look down to your bottom left, that's the main reason our submarine was sinking. And we've cut this hatchway 2 times bigger than it used to be. Just a circular hatch back in the day. Watch your heads, tall friends. And now we're in our diesel engines. 120 degrees Fahrenheit while they were running. These diesels are what powers the boat. You got the air intake valves, those 2 big red ones above you. And this is one of the, well, I should say it's just the last of the original exits leading out topside. There used to be a ladder here. They couldn't jump that high. And we got the air exhaust valves above my head over here, these 2 big red ones. The feeder fuel cells right above your head there. And this kind of smell that is reminiscent of Crayons, that is original. Those are diesel engine fumes left over from the 40s. That's what everybody would smell like and what all their food would taste like for 90 days straight.
Wow. That's the step.
Yeah. I have mine stepped.
And now we're in the electric boat. So we made it out of the scary part of the tour. No more explosions. Those 2 big black machines we're walking through, those are the diesel engines. They're what powers the boat while she's at the surface. What makes it a hybrid vehicle, though, is that when the boat goes under, those diesels get turned off. And these white machines we're standing next to are the electric relays. What gets spun up? Diesel electric boats. Now, to answer your question about whether or not the U.S. Navy got anything technologically important out of U-505, they actually thought this boat kind of sucked in every regard compared to American submarines in World War II, except for a couple. It was more robust, so it could dive deeper, it could travel further. Like I mentioned, it could travel from France to Florida and back again in 90 days' time. And it had better torpedoes. But what American submarines did way better, we had an ice cream machine built into our We also had air conditioning, multiple levels. So ours were way wider, and we had an actual galley, so a place to sit down and milk. So our subs were way more comfortable. These German subs kind of built like a black thing compared to And for one job, it does it well. It doesn't have any control monsters. Question before we tackle out the U.S. Navy boys save the sun.
So what did they book on the ship when you were out for 90 days?
Yep. That the second room we walked through, that was the kitchen. So it's a lot of soups basically. You did have canned goods as well, and so there'd be salted meat you'd be going through. And by the very end of the patrol, the food you didn't want was canned sausages because it tasted just like those diesel fumes we just walked through, and canned bread as well, which was very stale even once it was canned at the end of the patrol.
Good questions. Where would they go to the bathroom or shower?
Yeah.
Showering? That's a no-go.
Not a thing. Okay.
At the start of the war, these boats would surface very often, and you could actually hose yourself off, even suntan, and catch fish off the deck while the boat was surfaced. By the end of the war, too many American and English aircraft, which means we know for a fact on their last patrol, the 59 guys inside this submarine didn't bathe once over 80 days at sea. As far as bathrooms are concerned, you get 2 toilets for 59 guys for 90 days straight, so luxurious as you can imagine. And the larger restroom was used entirely as a food pantry until you could eat your way to the toilet, which means that for 45 out of your 90 days at sea, all 59 guys are just sharing the smaller bathroom, which we've tactfully left behind this hatchway for the end of the tour, which I'll point out to you in just a bit. Anything else? If not, when the Germans escaped, U-505 was not doing too well. The German crew eventually gets picked up by the Americans, but one of these German sailors trying to scuttle or sink U-505 on purpose before the Americans can jump on board removes the lid off of a very small hole in the floor, which we've already passed between the control room and the diesel engines. This is what's called the sea strainer, and when this German sailor took the lid off, it was causing tons of water to flood into the boat, so much so that where you fine folks are standing today was about 2 feet of water over your shoes. And 9 Americans make their way into this darkened, quickly sinking, and abandoned German sub. None of them spoke German. Half of them couldn't even swim, which you may think would be a prerequisite if you joined the Navy. But in the 40s, it was not. So these guys are basically feeling their way through the submarine, and luckily for history, another Chicago native, a man named Zenon Lacocius, just happened to trip over that big hole in the floor, and as he was getting up, Zenon brushed against what turned out to be the lid to the sea strainer. Had the German sailor that opened it up took the lid with him and tossed it into the Atlantic, U-505 would have sunk to the bottom. He left it behind, Zenon found it, and the rest is history that we're quite literally standing in today, which is very lucky. A little bit of dumb luck goes a long way. And eventually, the Americans break through this last hatchway, and inside, what they find is, thankfully for history, not much. The rear torpedo tube room, like you see today, that smaller steering wheel at the back of the compartment, that is the backup rudder control that teams of Americans had to manually straighten as the boat was towed across 2,500 miles of Atlantic from West Africa to Bermuda. And that smaller room with the checkered floor is the smaller bathroom all 59 guys were sharing for 45 days straight. Shrine. I'm going to let you guys step up here. Feel free to poke your noses through, take some photos, and we're going to answer any questions as we exit our submarine.
You're gonna have a fire.
Well, I was going to pee, but I was going to. I'll let you sit there.
I can help you up.
Yeah.
I can get up there.
That's the exhaust pipe. Diesels. No catalytic converter. You're going to hear about the fuel back there. And then they store their fuel in here as well.
That one right there.
That's the starter cylinder fuel. 200 tons of fuel. There was. So the Germans, and we knew this at the time, set up to a certain number of explosives throughout their submarine, what's called speed charges. There were 14 inside the U-505. And luckily for us, none of them had been set. The German crews didn't have time to set these bombs. But we found 13 on the first and second day we got to the boat. We found the 14th booby trap after 2 weeks of white ships in Bermuda. So had anyone set these bombs, U-505 would have sunk. We just got very lucky. Good question. If there's any other questions, you can ask us to move down there just to save on a little bit of space, but I'll be right with you as soon as I lock up the boat. I'll thank you. So that's a Type 7. This is technically a later model. It's a little bit bigger. But the Type 7s were the workhorse of the Kriegsmarine. Out of the 1,200 German U-boats built, about 700 of those were Type 7s.
Do you know how they differ from?
This one's larger, and the anti-aircraft complement is bigger. So on a Type 7, you'd get a couple, maybe one twin 20 millimeter, like the double barrel up there. You wouldn't get this big 3.87.
Okay.
So, yeah, no problem.
What part of
Alex?
the submarine allowed for the crew members not to get the bends?
So, unlike when you're breathing in and you dive, you don't have to worry about the bends because you're not breathing in